Welcome to Podjunction, where business meets podcasting. Whether you're on a morning jog, driving to work, whipping up a meal, or just simply taking a minute for yourself, our weekly bite-sized episodes promise fresh insights from successful podcasters who have cracked the code of using podcasts to grow their business. So whether you're a podcasting newbie or a seasoned podcaster, this episode is for you.
Wow, hello, welcome to Podjunction, episode 20. Yeah, we're on episode 20. I think we need a round of applause for that.
Don't you have any?
I think, hang
Some
on.
cool.
Is that... Not quite sure that's what I'm after. But yeah, welcome to episode 20 of the podcast of Podjunction. It's great to be with you. My name's Matt. Beside me is still COVID up. Sarah Payne. Still snot-tastic, aren't you? So it's great that you could join us. Fortunately, you can't catch COVID or the flu down a microphone. Great that you could be with us.
For them.
Fortunate for them. Yeah, absolutely. And so, we just talk about how to use podcasting to grow your business in a slightly fun, hopefully educational way. It normally involves us chatting about something. Warm welcome to you, especially if this is your first time with us. Why did I make such a big deal of episode 20?
Because that is a huge milestone in the podcaster's journey.
It is a huge milestone in any podcaster's journey. I think it's like something like 95% of people don't get past episode 5, and then 95% of the people that remain in don't get past episode 20.
Yeah.
So by getting...
Or make it to 20.
Yeah. So maybe we should celebrate episode 21 more than episode 20.
No, this is good.
Yeah.
I like celebrating.
Absolutely. So the consistency in podcasting is always part of the plan, isn't it? It's always part of the key. And so if you make it to episode 20, celebrate. Do something big on episode 20, because a lot of people have fallen out by this point. And so we celebrate episode 20 and we celebrate episode 100 just because it's 100. And then I don't know if we set maybe 500 after that will be the next one.
Feels a bit far away.
Yeah, maybe 250. I don't know. We'll figure something out. But we've got a little bit of a ways to go yet. But no, we're on episode 20. So very warm welcome to you. And what we've got going on in today's show.
We've got Lee Houghton again. And he is talking about the benefits that he's experienced from having been on this podcasting journey.
Just the benefits he's experienced having been on this podcast.
Sorry, doing his podcast.
I thought you were going to say being on this podcast.
Well, yeah, that too.
His business has taken off because this is his second week on our massive podcast. And so, yes, we appreciate that Lee is just killing it right now.
And I'm still on the slow train.
You might have to explain that if people didn't hear last week's show.
Yeah, so COVID and all, and just recovering from that.
Yeah, COVID. We were talking last week's episode about this because COVID is not a thing anymore. It's, we talk about COVID now and joke about it, but it's not a thing really, is it? It's just I've got a cold now. Yeah. No one cares. But someone made you take a test. That's how you found out you got COVID.
That is true. Yes.
Yeah. So and then you just disappeared for a few days. Mm-hmm. And this is your first day emerging from your cave.
Yeah, I've still done a school run or two.
Yeah.
Yeah, like a dump and drive kind of thing.
My COVID-infected kids at the school. That's fun. So it's good to have you. It's good to see you looking well.
Oh, thank you.
Because you didn't sound well when we spoke on the phone.
No.
You spent most of your time talking to a tissue, I think, when we spoke on the phone.
Yes.
Yeah. Fair play. I don't need to paint anybody's more imagination.
No.
But no, very warm welcome to you. So we've got Lee. We're going to carry on. What were we talking about this week, did you say? Sorry.
Benefits that he's experienced from podcasting.
Okay. Love these kind of conversations. And so, if you didn't catch last week's, do check it out. It is on your favorite podcast app. Lee is a legend. And last week we talked about asking great questions and having, interesting conversations with people. And
speaking of great questions, I've got one for you.
That was almost professional. That was almost like, we planned that, scripted that. We rehearsed that so many times. I feel like we pulled that off. No one would know. No. That was seamless.
Yeah, I worked hard at that one.
Yeah.
Okay, so
but well done.
Thank you. What's one piece of outdated podcasting advice do you think that people need to ditch or avoid?
I think it's the need to edit out all the So as you asked the question, I realized, because I can hear myself in my ears, I've just gone, oh yeah, it's just... So it's one of those where there's still quite a lot of podcasters do this. They'll record the podcast and then they will spend hours and hours and hours editing in software to get rid of the ers and the spaces and the blanks. And if you do the style of podcast that we would recommend that you do, which is quite lighthearted, quite conversational, then you don't need to. And so I remember I was talking to Amelia about this last year at Sub Summit. Amelia's a legend. We should get her on Podjunction, actually. Just a little side note, get Amelia Coombe on here. I was talking to Amelia about this. She was spending 8 hours editing her podcast. Each podcast she spent 8 hours. And I sat down with her, I was talking to her at Sub Summit. And which, if you're going to, by the way, if you're involved in e-commerce or anything subscription or membership based, check out subsummit.com. I will be there speaking at the event. So in fact, podcasting live at the event is what I'll be doing. It's going to be great fun. So do come join us. Sub Summit, quick cheeky plug. They'll love it because I plugged them on a completely different podcast. And so... we talked, and she was telling me it took her 8 hours to do a podcast. I said, I'm going to challenge you to get that podcast done completely in 2 hours or under. And she messaged me a few weeks later. You? Yeah. I've done it in under 2 hours. Nice. So, I think that's probably one of the things I'd say. We become so enamored by the slick, polished presentation, which is if you're a BBC production, I get it. If you're a high-end podcast like Diary of the CEO and you've got 8 staff and £1 million a year budget, I get it. If you're like mere mortals like me, I don't get it. I just don't. I don't think we've got the time, the energy, or resources. And I think that's why people drop out. They're trying to make something so slick and so perfect. And actually, I said this last week, I think it's the imperfections which bring its authenticity quite a lot. So, don't be in a rush to get rid of him. When you listen to this podcast, you'll have heard me go, we'll just leave them in there.
Yeah, we do.
Even to be fair, now you can use Descript and you can press a button and it'll get rid of them all for you. So you don't even have to spend hours editing. True. But even so, I'm a little words. Yeah. I'm a little bit reluctant to get rid of those and the filler words. I quite like them. So not for shorts, by the way. I would take them out for a short, or a reel. Yeah, because it needs to be snappy.
So I had a thought on this one.
Oh, excellent.
And I know I'm kind of taking away from everything else, but I think it might be interesting.
Sure. You do what you want. Like, you do you. You live your truth. Come on.
What was I saying? So I think also there is this, I could be wrong. It might not be outdated at all. But in my head, it's a bit outdated. That, like interview formats. So like even what we're doing now is not, I'm going to stop talking now. Can you help me?
I have no idea what you're trying to say.
What I'm trying to say is...
It's not manufactured. It's not scripted. It's, I don't know, where are you trying to go with it?
It's not...
slick. It's not, any way. Polished. It's not, professional.
It's not the norm.
Okay.
Right? I got there.
Okay, well done.
I might need to cut some of that out.
It's all staying in there.
But it's not the norm, is it? So that it's more varied. We're adding more variety to it. But I think it's also the same in the podcast niche or topics that people talk about. So when it's more conversational, it is more varied. It is more like the content is more diverse. And I think people come for that.
Yeah.
And I think when we first started, in my head anyway, it was very much like, okay, well, you pick a niche, you pick a topic, and this is the kind of stuff that you talk about forever because this is the label on your podcast. Yeah. But I think there's something to be said for the variety of the content as well. Not like completely changing, your...
We don't talk about plumbing on the e-commerce podcast, for
like
example.
that. I mean, we do talk about COVID on Podjunction, but you know what I mean, though.
No, I do. It's
I don't know. What do you think?
So I was talking to a beautiful lady. What day is it today? Is today Thursday?
It is.
I saw her Tuesday. And she said to me, Matt, I was listening to your e-commerce podcast because we're looking at whether to sort of invest or partner with that business in some way. And she was like, I was listening to your podcast on the way to see whoever was in the car. And she said, I chose the one about burnout, which was a bit of an unusual topic for the e-commerce podcast because we talk about e-commerce, but I wanted to do this one where we talk about what it's like to be an e-commerce business leader and actually how you can experience burnout, some of the things that you can talk about. So it was slightly off-piste, but it was still connected. And we had a brand new listener and that was the one she chose.
Yeah.
I thought it was fascinating. So yeah, you can add variety as a spice of life, but it has to stay connected to the theme. That's for sure.
Yeah. All right.
Is that all right?
That is
that
all
the right
right
answer?
That's great.
Awesome.
Because it was my answer. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I love when you say something a little bit cheeky, you always follow up with "I'm kidding." It's like your default. Whereas me, I just say whatever and I just leave it in the air. I don't qualify with I'm just joking. Really, I'm like whatever. Brilliant. Right. Anyway, enough about us. Let's listen to Lee, and then Sadaf and I will be back after this. Here's Lee. So you started the podcast because of this conversation with Chris and because of the events with Chris.
Yep.
Has it benefited your business in any way doing the podcast?
Yeah, so I think yes is the easy answer to that question, but directly and indirectly as well. What I found is credibility. So credibility has definitely increased because it's a weekly thing, and I can post about that. Not everybody in our space has got a podcast, so credibility has increased. I was in a client meeting probably about 6 months ago now with the manufacturing director, the people director, and the COO was dialing in, and as he dialed in, he went, "Oh, it's amazing to see the face. I've been listening to the podcast this morning." I was like, "Oh wow." I didn't realise that, but it's because I'm just talking about the stuff that I do all by day as well. It just helped further build credibility, and it's helped. People think that they know me before they know me because of the stuff that I'm saying. It's just authentically me. I have the same conversations like 24/7, all of the time. So credibility has increased. Just my ability to create and develop content has increased as well. Business, it's won us some business. It started some business, but it's also maintained relationships with the. So, like if I'm working in an organisation now and I'm leaving, then the people that I'm leaving behind are podcast listeners, because they've had some value. So then I maintain a relationship directly and indirectly with them, so that I still get a message every Monday when a podcast is released with a review from somebody I worked with 2 years ago. It's amazing. So there's so I can never. What I can do is go, having a podcast has generated X number of pounds. I can't do that directly. I can show where it's helped generate some pounds. But I've not just drawn the straight line. It's helped me start conversations with people that I've wanted to do business with as well, because it's provided a platform for senior people in organisations that I'd love to work with. It's provided a platform for me to get to know them, because I can have a conversation before the pod, you can have a conversation on the pod, and you can have a conversation post-pod to really just get to know them as people. So it's a great relationship builder, it's a great credibility builder, and it's a great business development builder. And then personally, it's a great personal development builder. So yes, I answered yes, really, really, and I think there's so many benefits to having a podcast that I just never envisaged at the start. Like I said before, I started it just to keep my lessons alive and keep them going and stuff like that. But the benefits I'm seeing now are just amazing. I love it.
Oh, it's brilliant.
That's probably the reason why. For those 4 reasons there, that it's got 200 odd episodes, and I can't see it ever ending. So that's yes, loads of benefits.
And it's interesting when you say I can't see it ever ending, because what that tells me, Lee, is actually not only are there the benefits to your business and yourself, it sounds like you get immense joy and satisfaction out of doing the podcast is something that you've actually come to love doing, just as for yourself, just as much as for your business, right?
Yes, go completely. Yeah, I absolutely love it. I am. So I used to have like 6 episodes stacked, ready to go. So I'd have a little buffer of episodes. So I didn't worry and things. And then when it get down to like 1 episode to go, there'd be a bit of a panic, and I'd have to try to record one really quickly to make sure that I could get it out the following week and stuff. And I think back now that actually I didn't want to let anybody down. I absolutely love it. I'm in this rhythm of 1 every single week, every Monday, 6:00 or whatever time it gets scheduled, it comes out, and I didn't want to let anybody down. If there's 1 person listening, so there's a bit of a pride thing. There's a bit of a consistency thing.
Very good. A slight pause at the end there. That's because we weren't hot on the switch, but I was too engrossed in the interview, chatting away with Lee there. So again, Lee, what a legend. Thanks for coming on the show, man. And the benefits of podcasting. What did you think?
I thought it was really good. I liked that he brought in from last week as well. He talked about the personal growth aspect of podcasting, and he's brought that up again in this. And as you pointed out, like he clearly loves what he does, doesn't he? And there's he's benefiting from it in so many different ways.
It's really interesting, actually. I mean, that was the end point that he touched on, and I think. Does podcasting help your business? Absolutely. Can it help the majority of businesses? Absolutely. But fundamentally, for it to do that, I think you've got to come to a place where you love what you do. I don't know if you have to start out there. I think sometimes you get passionate about the things you become good at. But at some point, you've got to have this belief and passion in what you're doing to maintain doing it, because it takes work. Right, it's not like it just falls out of the sky. The podcast, you've got to prep it. You've got to do some work behind it. And I think for Lee, whenever you talk to him, that is genuinely a man that really enjoys what he does. He loves podcasting for all the reasons that we'll talk about, and he mentioned. But there is that fundamental desire and passion for what he is doing, and it comes across in his podcast. Yeah. It comes across in his voice, and that's what makes him a really good podcaster. He just loves what he does. And there's a comment he made towards the end, which I think is so powerful. He said, when it comes to putting out the episodes, he didn't want to let anybody down. Yeah. And when you care about your audience that much, you're onto a winner, because it's fascinating, isn't it? I mean, we talk about, podcasting, it needs to fit into my schedule, blah, blah, blah. But when you get good and your podcast grows, people are counting on you to put information out there every week. Yeah. And thinking and caring about your audience and being passionate about what you're delivering to them. As there are many people that talk about that, and Lee did, and I think that comes across because he's just such a legend of a guy, I think that's a phenomenal starting place.
Yeah. Do you remember the lessons that he learned from his friend?
Oh, you've put me on the spot there. No, I wish I had my notebook with me. He talked about, I remember him having the conversation with Chris, and it changed his life in in terms of his friend I think his friend was dying, and he learned some, I think there were just regrets or things that he wished he'd done differently. Yeah. And Lee was like, right, I'm going to make sure that I listen to what you're saying, and put those into practice. But I'm going to have to add a good segue. Listen to the full length episode. Yeah. They're all in there.
Yeah. I also thought it was interesting that he talked about how the podcast increased his credibility. And because that's something Marcia touched on as well, didn't she? Yeah. When we were doing her episode, and how it's how that guy that got on the call with him. Yeah.
Yeah, I think to shortcut everything. Every guest we have on Podjunction, if I say to them, or you say to them when you're interviewing them, or if I'm interviewing them, what are the benefits to your business from podcasting? They're all going to say the same thing when it comes to credibility. They're all going to say, it helps me start great conversations and it builds my credibility. It gives me great content. I've not yet met anybody that can say, this podcast has brought in this much money. Other than if you're doing a sponsorship style podcast, you know, we do talk about that on the show. But if you're using it to build your business like Lee, so he's using it for connections and maintaining relationships and all that sort of stuff with his business coaching clients, then it's very hard to monetize that. But he's passionate about it. He loves it and he keeps doing it. And I think you'll hear that as a common theme, credibility being, I think, the key one, that it increases your credibility. And so the lady that I spoke to 2 days ago, when she was listening to the burnout episode, what I can't tell you is the fact that she listened to me in her car on a podcast talking about a topic, and we're having conversations about do we get involved with their business. I don't know how much credibility I've scored with her from that episode, but there will be some. And the fact that she could listen to me in a podcast in the car would have helped the conversation I had with her subsequently. And that's one of the things that Lee was talking about, wasn't it? And I think it's such a powerful thing. And I don't know how to quantify it. And until you've experienced it, it's a very hard thing to sort of get your head around in some respects. But as soon as you've done it, as soon as you've gone and put a podcast out there and somebody's listened to it and they talk to you about it, you get it. Does that make sense? So yeah, credibility is massive.
It's interesting, isn't it? The podcasting platform, it's so multifaceted and you're getting so much out of it. It's not just what's on the bottom line, is it? So it's quite cool.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I think you cannot underestimate. And this is where you have to remember when things get tough, when things get hard and you go, oh, no one's called me this week. You know, I mentioned my business on the podcast, but no one picked up the phone. It's easy to look at it. And this is why I think quite a lot of podcasters stop, is because you go, well, hang on, I did a podcast, 4 people listened to it this week. And no one called when I mentioned my business. And it's like, well, yeah, no one's going to call. Right? I mean, it's an obvious statement to make. But when you do it week in, week out, when it's getting hard, if you've got that passion for it, you'll keep doing it. But yeah, it's the other things that you also have to look at, the credibility factor, the how many interesting conversations have I had with people that I wouldn't have had I not done the podcast. And if you target those conversations, like with, you know, people that you want to do business with, I mean, that's just wild, right? So, you've got to look beyond the pound, shilling, and pence, as we say here in the UK. And I think you've got to see it on this sort of multifaceted benefit level, which is not always easily that. It's not always that easy to measure. Is a better way to phrase that.
And it comes with time, isn't it? It's kind of an accumulative effect rather than
a lot like social media in that sense. You know, social media. It's hard to measure a return on investment sometimes. And actually the people that do well at social media rave about it. And 90% of people go, it doesn't work. Well, clearly it does. But for the 90% of people that did it and it didn't work, probably what they didn't work. And I'd say podcasting is the same thing. You know, most of the people that drop out say podcasting doesn't work. You go, well, actually, I think podcasting works 99.9% of the time. Where you've missed it is in this area, this area, and this area. If that makes sense. So yeah. What else?
What else? I guess the other thing maybe is his like the personal satisfaction that he gets out of it and the personal development that's come out of it for him as well. It's not just the credibility and the business that's developing as a result of it, but his personal growth, satisfaction.
Yeah, I was smiling because when he was talking about that, he used the word pod. And it's one of those words, I think, when you start doing podcasting, you shorten the word podcast to pod. And it just reminds me of the people that say, ping me an email rather than send ping and pod. This is the same thing, really. Lee, I think you're a legend. I can't use the word pod myself. I don't know. Some people do it. You get around people. Oh yeah, the pod's doing really well. What, the pod? Oh, the podcast. Okay. So yeah, if you abbreviate pod, good on you. I can't do it. And But yeah, you're right. It's that, again, that benefit, isn't it? And these are those intangibles, massive intangibles. So, like this morning, what I wrote an email to a supplier that we're going to use for a new website. I copied in Jen, who you know, who's the marketing head of marketing in that, and so copied those two in. And I also brought in a guest who had been on the show, who I know could help with that whole thing. And I'm like, let's get him involved in the conversation. And so that network, that growth in terms of people that I know, it's been brilliant. If I'd have not done the podcast, I wouldn't have been able to bring him in the conversation, and he wouldn't be able to bring into the conversation the value that I know he's going to bring. Does that make sense? Well, can I quantify that? I don't know. I don't know how I'd try, but it's that aspect of it, which for me is a big deal. The ability to say, oh, talk to such and such a person, or let's get such and such on the phone and talk to them. I think my personal network has grown tremendously. And so we've, in business, I won't go into all the details, but we've made some big changes recently, or making some big changes. Well, part of that, if I trace the origins of that, came from the fact that I had a conversation with we did a podcast with a guy, had a great conversation. A year later, I connect back with him, check in, have a conversation with him, and the result of that conversation kind of cemented in my head some things that I was thinking about, which has resulted in some big changes in our business. Yeah. Again, all happened because of the podcast and people that I knew from the podcast. So, those big changes, are they going to make money? Absolutely. Can I put them all down to the podcast? No, not at all. Yeah. But podcasting was definitely part of it. And this is what I mean. It's all these extra stories, whether it's my personal growth, whether it's my network, whether it's credibility, whether it's having meaningful conversations, whatever it is, whether I can get somebody in on a conversation about a website we're trying to develop and get his benefits in there, his value as well. So much stuff. So, yeah. I don't know what your question was. I felt like I rambled then.
No, I don't remember the question either.
Well, you can tell, ladies and gentlemen, we don't subscribe to the show has to be uber polished. And we definitely don't have a script playing on the teleprompter in front of us, because that would just be a ridiculous script we would have just written. But yeah, no, I think we'll talk about this a lot on the show. I'm curious, though, if you're listening to episode 20, and we've talked about this a couple of times. Maybe this is your first time with us. Maybe it's not. Maybe you're thinking about podcasting as a tool to grow your business. Maybe you're using podcasting. Maybe you love it. Maybe you're struggling with it. I am really curious where you're at and what the benefits to you and your business are. So reach out to me on social media. Just find me on Instagram, Matt Edmondson, or find me on LinkedIn, Matt Edmondson. And just let me know. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to know what you think, what the benefits to your business are for podcasting, and we'll cajole all the information together, because it really, really intrigues me what people say, and like I say, there are some common threads amongst it, but then there are things which I think become unique to you and your business. And so super curious. But this is how we use podcasting to grow our business. Yes, many ways, which is why we're on episode 20, and we've not even scratched the surface. We've got a long way to go yet. Yeah. We're talking about episode 500 now, so Yeah. Plus,
celebrating.
Absolutely. We just love it. Do you love it? Do you love the podcasting thing? Are you a Lee Houghton kind of thing?
Well, you know what? I think I'm very early in my journey of hosting.
Early on this side of the microphone.
Yes. And but it is interesting. It's very exciting, and I can see what you guys talk about as far as the evolution of your style. So I'm excited for where I'm going to end up. I'm not loving where I'm at right now.
No, it's great. It's a backstory. If you're listening to the show, Sadaf and I've worked together for years, and I've normally been the guy behind the microphone, and you are the head of production. So, in fact, you now run the whole podcast company. So I don't know what that means job title wise, but it's just like the boss, the dude. And so yeah, but so you've got a lot of experience on the other side of the microphone. So, and this is the first time you've been on this side of the microphone. So this is your 20th episode of Podjunction into podcasting. So it's a big milestone for you. I don't even know what episode I'm on. I don't know if I can count that high, but for you, it's awesome. And what's interesting, actually, we should bring it out. We were talking about this the other day with the video intros. So we use these clips on the podcast, like the intro, it's you talking, like, welcome to Podjunction. At the end, it's like, thanks for watching. And we hadn't in this episode, but we usually have a little bit of mid-roll and stuff, and that's you talking as well. And actually, the evolution for you has been the energy. So
that's one of the evolutions.
It is. Yes. If you watch some of the earlier episodes, Sadaf's like, welcome to Podjunction. It's great that you're here.
It's true.
And we ran with it because, I mean, you've got to start somewhere, right? And yes, we can wax lyrical, you know, you're a podcast company, should you do better? I'm like, we wanted to do this the same way you guys would do it in terms of launching it and getting people listening. So if you watch some of the earlier episodes, just listen to the intros, you know. And we were talking earlier, we need to redo them all because everything's changing here as it does and evolves. But I don't know if actually they've seen any of the newer stuff that you've done. The energy is much higher, and actually you're smiling at the camera rather than looking at it, scared of it. You know, it's that kind of thing. So, all go on a journey.
The other evolution I'd like to point out is my use of the microphone. If you haven't noticed, Matt hasn't prompted me for quite some time now.
Yeah, I've not gone. Yeah, we all get better. All get better at talking to the microphone. Absolutely. And also, when you laugh, you move away from the microphone. That's another thing. But yeah, no, it's good. It's good. Your mic technique is good. Your energy levels are getting better. It's almost like you're a pro. I don't think people would have noticed had we not told them.
Yeah, that's okay.
Even if you've been on a bit of a go slow today with your COVID-itis.
It's pretty good. Pretty good going.
Good. Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Anything else from you?
No.
Legend. Right. Well, we're going to clear off. We're going to let you mull on the lessons of Lee, the benefits of podcasting. Thanks for sticking with us through episode 20. If you haven't done so yet, make sure you subscribe to the show because we've got some more great episodes coming out. Obviously, they're going to be great because the guests are great and Sadaf's great. Well, we're great. We're together. We're legends. And so, yeah, absolutely been great to have you. Thanks for joining us. Hope you get a lot out of it. That's it from us for this week. We will see you next time. Bye for now.
And that brings us to the end of today's episode at Podjunction. If you've enjoyed the insights from this episode and want to hear the full conversation with today's special guest, don't forget to visit podjunction.com where you'll find more information about how you can join Podjunction cohort. Whether you listened while on the go or in a quiet moment, thank you for letting us be a part of your day. Remember, every episode is a chance to gain insights and to transform your business with podcasting. So keep on tuning in, keep on learning, and until next time, happy podcasting.